There's a story about Darth Vader costume I made. July of '77, I took my vacation by driving south from Fairbanks, Alaska to pick up my mother and drive down and pick up Chris, Mel, and Nat in Palo Alto and bring them back to Fairbanks. Through a joint custody agreement after a divorce, Gina had them from January through June and I for July through December. So I had some rocket range business to do in California. We drove to Los Angeles where I picked up a low light level TV camera from the company that was making it for us in Anaheim. From there we drove to Phoenix, Arizona where we test fit the TV into a Spire payload, SPIRE, being put together at the Space Data Corporation. The payload was scheduled to launch from Poker that fall. We took the camera back to Los Angeles for some final tweaking. Then we headed back north to take Mom back to Moscow. We spent a couple days with Mom on her farm near Moscow before getting back on the road to drive to Alaska. Chris, Mel, and Nat had already seen a movie playing in Moscow called Star Wars and said we would enjoy it. We barely got in. The theater was absolutely full. Chris, Mel, and Nat were able to sit together in one area while I sat with Mom near the rear of the theater. I really like this action adventure film with the good guys as underdogs, fighting the powerful bad guys led by arch-villain Darth Vader. The college-age audience had obviously seen it many times before. They hissed the villain and cheered for the good guys. My mother thought the whole movie was silly, but Chris, Mel, Nat, and I liked it a lot. After we got back to Alaska, I decided to make a Darth Vader costume for Halloween. I'd seen them advertised in magazines and asked her some of the people who came to Poker as rocket support personnel to help me get a head mask costume. Thought they'd be available stateside. But it was a hot item this Halloween, and there were none to be found. I decided to try to make my own. Chris, Mel, and Nat helped me in many ways to craft the final result. I always wanted to make a face mask, but now that the time had come, my mind went blank on where to find the information to do so. This time, Samsung Hardware had a kind of craft section, and a little booklet hanging on a turnstile rack. I read you could take heavy aluminum foil, press it on your face, make a cast, coat it with plaster cloth, the kind used to make a cast for a broken arm or leg. I was off and running then. I went to the Tanna Clinic and asked to see Nurse Martha Hands. I'd known her for many years. Her husband, Dr. Hands, had put Melody's curved legs when she was born, straightened them out. I told Martha what I wanted to do, and she was a bit skeptical and reluctant. I never figured out which was the stronger for her, but she finally gave me 4 rolls. I made an aluminum foil mold of my face and started cutting strips of the plaster coated cloth, wetting them and putting them in an aluminum foil form. After heating them in the oven, I kept applying layers until I got the face mask I wanted. Then I bought some wall patching compound and filled in and smoothed the minor holes in the plaster of Paris cloth. I bought a pair of reflective sunglasses and cut them apart and turned them upside down, mounted them on the mask for me to see out. Put some rubber weather stripping on the inside that would be next to my cheeks. I added triangular cardboard nose piece on the outside. I used 1/4 inch square balls of wood strips glued to the outside to look like a grill on the part of the mask over my mouth. I put holes in my mask so I could drink liquids through a straw. I took a yellow construction worker's helmet and turned the headliner in it backwards so that I wore it with the bill of the hat faced backwards. I turned it into a Darth Vader-like helmet by adding a thin plastic blue colored snow slide sheet as a skirt that ran from ear to ear around the backside of my head. I used some balsa wood to brace the front sides so they would not curl under. Then I painted the helmet black. I cut a Rubbermaid dish drainer plate and turned it on something that hung around my neck and mounted a 9-inch square cake pan on the dish strainer. bought a cheap audio amplifier and speaker that I mounted in it. I mounted the microphone in front of my mouth inside the mask where I could breathe into it and make it sound like the breathing noises Darth Vader had made in the movie. I added other things to the chest plate of my costume and the belt. I bought a black sweater and black pants and a pair of black tall slip-on boots. I made a belt with various things on it. I had a futuristic looking pistol with an electric cord and a handle that came from a video game. Strangely enough, the most difficult part of the Darth Vader costume for me to make was the flowing cape. I bought black cloth. I knew how to hang fishing weights around the base to make it appear to flow, but I couldn't get our sewing machine to work. We were renting and living in the ground level apartment in Fox, Alaska, and the woman upstairs had 3 daughters, and the oldest daughter got our sewing machine working and was able to sew the cape. This literally happened in the final few hours as Darth Vader, my debut as Darth Vader at the Fox Elementary School party. I was on the Fox Elementary School Halloween committee with Charlene Sims, a long-standing teacher friend of Chris Millinette. Fox Elementary was a relatively new school serving parents stretched far along the roads leading into Fox. The school wanted to get the parents together and a Halloween party seemed like the way to do it. At the party, Charlene Sims' husband's little cousin was in awe and followed me around with my Darth Vader costume everywhere, always staying a few steps behind me and bolting out of arm's reach when I turned so I could see him. People in the school thought I came from Hollywood and wore a hanging plant holder constructed from white rope for best prize. Chris had made arrangements to spend the night at his friend Tommy Diak's house on Chena Ridge after the Fox School Halloween party. Tommy's father was a medical doctor in Fairbanks. I walked Chris to Tommy's door in my costume so Tommy could see it. Tommy really liked it and asked me to come in and show it to his mom and dad. Tommy led me to his mother and father's bedroom. They were laying in bed with lights on reading. Mrs. Diak just thought my costume was great as she sat up. Her blankets fell away and she was naked. I was very embarrassed and glad she could not see my face because of my mask. It did not seem to bother her a bit. Tommy and Chris were somewhere else by then. I made my way back to Melody and Nat, who were waiting in the pickup. I told Melody and Nat we should go visit Darth Vader at the Bentley Mall that same evening. They didn't think this was a good idea, but I insisted. I said I would say I was his long-lost brother from across the galaxy. Say hello, shake hands, and be out of there in a few minutes. We parked in front of the western entrance to the Bentley Mall and walked in together. There were several people in the mall, and they gave me kind of strange looks you might imagine. We walked east to the fabric and sewing shop on the right-hand side. I went in and asked if I could buy some 1/2 inch wide heavy-duty black elastic straps, as my face mask was so heavy it kept trying to sag forward. The sales clerk giggled and laughed, but did not serve me. I turned around and there stood dozens of people, women, men, children, all looking at me. They started handing me things to sign. I told them I was Darth Vader's brother, but it did not seem to matter what I told them. They just kept shoving little scraps of paper, pieces from grocery sacks, etc., into my hands to sign. I moved out of the shop to the central area of the mall, and the crowd moved with me. I lost Melody and Nat in a crush of other people and was worried about where they were. Then I did see that Nathaniel was standing on a bench several feet away, but I could not find Melody. Larry Sweet came forward with Mike. I said hello to them and said I bet they couldn't guess who I really was. Larry said something clever, but I knew he didn't have a clue as to who I really was. A man in a suit came around behind me and leaned forward to ask who I was. I told him my name was Neil Brown. I'd won first prize in the Fox Elementary School Halloween costume contest earlier that evening. I'd come by to meet the Bentley Mall's Darth Vader before going home. He said his name was Steve and asked if I could keep it up for a few more minutes. He said he would come back and get me when their Darth Vader was ready to take my place. A few minutes later, he did just that. He announced to the crowd that I needed a break and I'd be right back. And with that, he led me into a haircutting salon on the north side of the mall close by. There I met Darth Vader, whose mask was not very good. He mumbled something and followed Steve back into the crowd. I took my helmet and face mask off and talked with the people there. They said their Darth Vader walked into the mall about the same time I had, carrying his costume in a bag. His name was Carl Schroeder, and he was a local businessman who owned a cooking utensil place in the mall. He had bought his Darth Vader costume from a place in Hollywood a week or so before. Later, I saw that what his face was just a big rubber bag. And in fact, it was so bad he sent it back. And that's why he was so late. His replacement face mask came aboard the 10 p.m. Alaska Airlines flight. I repeated that he had just gotten to the mall as I walked in, fully costumed. They told me they were at first afraid I was there from another mall to ruin their night. Then they told me I looked great and offered me a drink of liquor they were consuming. I declined the drink and told them I was glad to have been of help. I thought to myself that it had certainly been a strange experience, surrounded by people as I had been, but that now I needed to find my kids. I found my Nathaniel waiting for me, and he told me Melody had gone out to pick up the weight. We joined her there. We had spent a lot of time talking about what happened on the way home and then before we went to sleep. We were dumbfounded by the way people no longer treated you as a human being when you were in costume. The following morning, I received a telephone call from Tommy Dieck's father asking if I'd go to a Halloween party with him and his wife that night. They were going to a Halloween party at the home of a local doctor. I said I would go, but only for a while. I drove about 15 miles from Fox to their home on Sheena Ridge, then followed them in their car. As it turned out, we drove almost all the way back to Fox. We finally stopped at a large home overlooking Fairbanks, about 1 mile west of the top of Engineer Hill. When I walked in, there sat the Bentley Mall Darth Vader. I struck up a conversation with him, but could not hear a word. He could not hear a word I said. He took off his rubber bag head and told me how miserable his costume was. Bag was slid along, his head mask bag was slid along either side of the neck, which allowed you to pull it over your head. But once you had it on, you could not hear very well, and you kept breathing the air you'd already breathed on before. The only openings were the eye holes, and they were covered with colored plastic sheeting. I, on the other end, had a face mask that covered only my face, but had not only holes for me to drink through, but holes for me to sip through a straw. My helmet was separate, and this allowed me to easily hear what other people said. Carl was nice enough to talk to, but was not nearly excited as I was about Darth Vader costumes. The only thing I remember about this evening was the guy had a cigar in his mouth with a swarthy beard, wearing thermal underwear, a tutu, and bunny boots. He was carrying a stick with a star on it and called himself the Thunder Fairy. I thought that was very clever, and some years later made a similar costume for myself at a Halloween party. Randy Wagner, who worked for me as the operations controller at poker, had been critical of me when I brought the Darth Vader costume to work and showed it to her. She said she thought it was a little weird, but later she really got into the fun of it. She asked me if her husband Paul could borrow it for a church Halloween party Sunday night. She dressed up as Princess Leia to accompany him. She brought my costume and hers to show me Monday morning. The two of us put our costumes on and visited some of the Rocketeers working in the payload assembly building. They loved our costumes and took pictures of us. Randy and I quit work at noon and drove to and toured the Geophysical Institute in our costumes. I had alerted my Geophysical Institute photographer friend Mal Lockwood by telephone before leaving poker. He told us to come see him first. We did, and he took some nice black and white photos that he printed up. The resulting pictures looked like movie posters for the movie Star Wars. Mal also took a couple of photos of Darth Vader and Princess Leia with Nita Stilke, the GI business office manager, and with Juan Roeder, the director of the Geophysical Institute.